Hey everyone, Dylan here with Exotic PC, here with a special comparison video of the Alienware Area 51 and MSI GT76 Titan. Let's take a look at what makes these desktop replacements so powerful and how they stack up against each other in side-by-side benchmark tests. We're going to start this off by going over the specs of the Alienware Area 51M. For the CPU, it's a socketed Intel 9th generation i7-9700K processor. For the GPU, it's an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 with 8GB of GDDR6. For memory, it comes with 16GB of DDR4 at 2400 MHz. That is upgradable up to 64GB. For storage, it comes with a 1TB SSHD that is also upgradable. For Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, it comes with Realtek 2.5GB per second, Ethernet NIC, Killer Wireless 1550 2x2 AC, and Bluetooth 5.0. For the power supply unit, it's a lithium-ion 90Wh battery and two power adapters, one at 330 watts and one at 180 watts. So as you can see, the Area 51 is packing some serious power with it. Let's see how this stacks up with the specs of the GT76 Titan. For the CPU, it's an Intel Core 9th generation i9-9900K processor. For the GPU, it's an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 with 8GB of GDDR6. For memory, it comes with 64GB of DDR4 at 2666 MHz. That is upgradable to 128GB max. For storage, it comes with 1TB PCIe NVMe SSD Super RAID 4 plus 1TB 7200 RPM hard drive. For Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, it comes with the Killer Gaming Network E3000, Killer Wi-Fi 6 AX1650, 2x2 AX plus Bluetooth 5.0. For the power supply unit, it comes with an 8-cell 90Wh lithium-ion battery and two 230 watt adapters. Alright, let's move over to the keyboard and screen for both these machines. The GT76 comes with a full desktop keyboard. The SteelSeries per key RGB keys produce bold and vibrant colors. Customize each key to your liking and receive real-time in-game status through keyboard lighting, or even watch the lights dance to your favorite tunes. The keyboard paired with the Mystic lighting underneath create a uniquely colorful design. The 17.3-inch Full HD 144Hz 3 millisecond IPS level display has extremely thin bezels that create an engrossing display, and the IPS level panel creates stunningly deep and true colors. This is a perfect display to pair with the 2080 underneath, and the colorful RGB on the keyboard and Mystic lighting underneath create a dynamic laptop that really stands out. Let's see what the Area 51M has to offer. Featuring a 17.3-inch Full HD 144Hz screen with NVIDIA G-Sync and anti-glare IPS display, the colors and contrast are superb on this screen. The display also comes with Tobii's eye tracking technology, which is a fun feature to play around with. I even had it on a setting that can dim the screen when you look away and then turn back to full brightness once you look back at the screen. The Area 51M has a full keyboard with a number pad and macro keys on the left to suit any gamer's needs. The keys are nice and firm with long key travel and a spacious layout. Utilizing Alienware's Command Center software, you can customize the lighting options right down to the individual key. Both these laptops feature awesome screens and colorful keyboards, making both of these models excellent choices when looking at these features. While both of them feature HD web cameras, the Area 51M features Tobii eye tracking, which is really fun to play around with, while the GT76 features Mystic lighting underneath that make it extremely customizable color-wise. Now let's move over to the fit and finishes for these models. We're going to start with the Area 51M. This is a very futuristic looking laptop with great attention paid to its unique design. The laptop stands out from others in the industry with its complementing black and stark white panels and unique features like the futuristic A51 font on the back and lighted backside. The magnesium alloy exoskeleton is strong while reducing the overall chassis weight. The most notable thing to say about this laptop is that it is a mobile desktop replacement. The components can be fully replaced and upgraded. This laptop is an absolute beast performance-wise, and its quality is top-notch. This is a big, heavy gaming laptop that weighs in at 8.5 pounds and measures up to 1.6 inches thick. The size is a consequence of the hardware, however, which includes desktop instead of mobile grade components. Now we're going to move over to the GT76. The GT76 is the most extreme Titan ever created. The exotic car-inspired design runs through the exterior with aerodynamic streamlined aluminum cover and carbon fiber themed bodywork. The grills and metal mesh together to contribute maximum intake and exhaust for its unprecedented horsepower. Another thing to note about this monster laptop is the insane amount of cooling powered by new Cooler Boost Titan. It's redesigned to handle even the most extreme heat, granting the GT76 Titan its overclocked desktop performance. You can see the cooling in the back with the see-through panel. The GT76 comes in at a heavy 9.92 pounds with its 8-cell battery. It isn't the most portable gaming laptop on the market, but what it lacks in compactness, it more than makes up with its insanely powerful processor and GPU. Alright, enough of all that, time to move over to the comparison benchmarks. We did a lot of tests for these machines and have included our manual overclocking up to 5 GHz for some of these tests. Let's start with the Firestrike test. For the Alienware Area 51, it scored 22,722, while the MSI GT76 scored 21,790. And then if we look at the overclock scores, you can see that the Area 51M scored 22,926, while the GT76 scored 22,143. This is a very close test with some great scores on both sides, both testing better than 96% of all models tested, but it looks like the Area 51M takes a slight edge. Now we're going to move over to the Cinebench scores for both models here. For the GT76, it scored 4,728, while the Area 51 scored 4,536. Moving over to the overclock scores, for the GT76, it scored 4,764, while the Area 51M scored 4,717. Looks like for the Cinebench score, the GT76 Titan takes the close win in this category. For the last test before we get into the game benchmarks, we did a personal favorite of mine, the superposition test. The Area 51M came in with a nice score of 19,314, while the GT76 scored a hefty 19,933. Looks like the GT76 Titan is the winner for this test. Let's see if that carries over into any of our game tests. We started our game test with Tomb Raider. We'll show the factory stock test first, then move over to the Overclock 5.0 test. Looking at the GT76 first, on medium settings it averaged 140 frames per second, on high settings it averaged 133 frames per second, and on very high it averaged 119 frames per second. And below that you can see the results for the Area 51. On medium settings it averaged 165 frames per second, on high settings it averaged 131 frames per second, and on very high it averaged 117 frames per second. The scores on Tomb Raider were very even. Let's see how they stack up in the overclock test. For the Area 51M, on median settings, it averaged 135 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 132 frames per second. And on very high, it averaged 128 frames per second. As you can see, there are some more consistent numbers, but not the same top-end frames per second on medium settings. And you can see how that stacks up against the GT76 Titan. On medium settings, it averaged 130 frames per second. On high settings, it also averaged 130 frames per second. And on very high, it averaged 123 frames per second. I'd give the slight edge to the Area 51M in this one. Very close as shown on the charts. Let's see if there are any separation between these two in the next test, Dirt Rally. We start with the GT76 on this game. On medium settings, it averaged 193 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 141 frames per second. And on ultra high, it averaged 137 frames per second. And below that, you can see how that stacks up with the Alienware Area 51M. On medium settings, it averaged 216 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 158. And on ultra high, it averaged 147 frames per second. These are some pretty big numbers coming from the Area 51M. Reaching over 200 FPS for the first time in our testing, let's take a look at these overclock numbers, starting with the Area 51M. On medium settings, it averaged a crazy high 232 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 164 frames per second, and on very high, it averaged 151 frames per second. You can see the super high numbers from the Alienware side. Let's see how the MSI GT76 stacks up. On medium settings, it averaged 197 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 140 frames per second, and on ultra high, it averaged 134 frames per second. So as you can see, the GT76 Titan puts up some very respectable numbers, but is edged by the Alienware when it comes to the Dirt Rally test. Now we're moving over to our final game test, the Division 2, and we're going to start by looking at the factory stock test for the MSI GT76. On medium settings, it averaged 139 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 121 frames per second, and on ultra high, it averaged 95 frames per second. These are some very respectable numbers there. Let's move over to the Area 51M. On medium settings, it averaged 170 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 142 frames per second. And on ultra high, it averaged 117 frames per second. As you can see, there's a pretty significant difference between the two on this stock test. Let's see if that carries over to the overclock test. For the Area 51M, on medium settings, it averaged 172 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 146 frames per second. And on ultra high, it averaged 119 frames per second. And for the GT76, on medium settings, it averaged 130 frames per second. On high settings, it averaged 120 frames per second. And on ultra high, it averaged 97 frames per second. On this final test, you can see that the Area 51M is the clear clear winner here. After these tests, it's very clear to see that the Alien 51M has higher FPS ranks in all the game tests. The Area 51M may be seeing benefits due to the modular graphics card they build in this machine, while the GT76 GPU is built into the rest of the motherboard as you would traditionally find on most other laptops. But no matter which of these super powerful laptops you would like to choose, there is no real wrong choice. Both these desktop replacements can handle AAA games with ease, reaching triple digits and in some cases getting as high as 200 frames per second in more demanding titles. Now, we have done a full overview for both of these laptops, and I'll make sure to include the link of those YouTube videos above so you can see us go further in depth with each model. Or if you're looking to do a little personal investigating for yourself, feel free to click the product link below. If you're looking to put a personal touch on your machine, be sure to check out our extensive customization options before checkout, including upgrades to the CPU, GPU, RAM, storage, overclocking, custom paint, hydro and graphic wraps, laser etching, and much more. If you'd like to take a closer look at any of the specific benchmark tests or specs that we've provided, make sure that you pause the video on the one you would like to view closer. If not, always be sure to check out the product link in the description or leave any comments down below if you have any questions for us here at Exotic PC. This has been Dylan, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for future product overviews and reviews.